The next 12 hours felt like 12 years to Jiwon. He sat in a corner of Hyun's laboratory while the scientists worked, pulling up old files and technical specifications that had not been reviewed in decades. The vault had been built 187 years ago, by master architects who were all long dead. Understanding their work now was like trying to read a language that nobody spoke anymore. Hyun worked without stopping. Her 4 eyes scanned display after display, reading through thousands of pages of technical data. Bauman helped where she could, cross-referencing files and checking old maintenance logs. Other scientists ran simulations trying to predict what would happen when they triggered the diagnostic cycle. "Here," one scientist called out, "I found the master engineering code." It was buried in an archived file from the vault's original construction. Hyun brought up the file. The code appeared on the screen. A sequence of 47 digits that looked completely random. Good, that is one part. Now we need to figure out how to trigger the diagnostic manually. The diagnostic cycle is controlled by an internal timer, another scientist explained. It counts down from 10,000 hours, then runs the diagnostic automatically. But the timer is part of the vault's core programming. We cannot access it without the Emperor's DNA. There must be another way, Hyun said. Jiwon, come here. Jiwon stood and walked over, feeling all the eyes in the room on him. Yes? You said you work with human security systems. How do they handle maintenance? Jiwon thought about it. Most systems have a manual override for diagnostics. Usually there is a physical access point like a panel or port where maintenance workers can connect diagnostic equipment. That way you do not need to access the core system remotely. A physical access point, Hyun repeated. She turned to her team. Check the original construction documents. Look for any external maintenance ports, the scientists searched. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Jiwon began to worry that he was wrong again, that he had given them false hope. Then Bowman made a small sound. Found something. There is a maintenance port on the vault's eastern wall. According to these notes, it was installed for emergency repairs, but it has never been used. Hyun pulled up the specifications for the port. It is designed to accept a direct connection from authorized diagnostic equipment. If we can connect to it and send the right signals, we might be able to trigger the diagnostic cycle early. Might? One scientist asked. Nothing is certain, Hyun said. But it is our best option. Bowman, take a team and locate that port. Make sure it is still functional. Bowman nodded and left quickly with 3 other engineers. Hyun turned back to her displays, now focusing on the 3-factor authentication that would be needed once the vault entered recalibration mode. The master engineering code we have. The manual override sequence should be in the same files, but the timestamp verification is going to be difficult. What does that mean exactly? Jiwon asked. Timestamp verification? The vault needs to verify that the recalibration is happening at a legitimate time. It requires calculating the exact number of seconds since the vault's initial activation. That should be easy, right? You know when the vault was built? Hyun shook her head. It is more complicated. The vault's internal clock accounts for time dilation, calendar reforms, system updates, and power transfers. Over 187 years, there have been hundreds of small changes. We need to account for all of them. She pulled up a timeline showing the vault's entire history. Every time the power was rerouted. Every time the planet's rotation was adjusted for calendar purposes. Every small change that affected how time was measured. We need to calculate the total number of seconds, accounting for all of these variables. If we are off by even a few seconds, the verification will fail. And if it fails? Jiwon asked. The vault will interpret it as an attack and seal itself permanently. No pressure, Jiwon thought. The scientists formed 2 teams. One worked on the timestamp calculation, going through records that dated back nearly 2 centuries. The other team prepared the equipment they would need to connect to the maintenance port. Jiwon watched them work, amazed at how quickly they moved. These were people who had spent their entire lives studying and building technology. They knew what they were doing. Bowman returned an hour later. We found the port. It is functional, but the access panel is sealed. We will need to remove several layers of plating to reach it. That will take time. How much time? Hyun asked. 4 hours. Maybe 5. Hyun looked at the clock. They were already 6 hours into their 12-hour deadline. Do it. We do not have a choice. While Bowman's team worked on accessing the maintenance port, Hyun's team continued calculating the timestamp. Jiwon watched the numbers pile up on the displays. Seconds, minutes, hours, days, years. All of it had to be exact. "We have a problem," one of the scientists announced. There was a power transfer 30 years ago when the palace expanded its energy grid. The vault was offline for a brief period during the transfer, but the records do not show exactly how long. "How long could it have been?" Hyun asked. "Anywhere from 1 second to 10 seconds. We have no way to know." Hyun rubbed her eyes. "Then we guess. Calculate the most likely duration based on standard power transfer procedures. That is not very scientific." "I know, but we do not have a choice." More time passed. Jiwon found himself pacing, unable to sit still. Every minute that went by was another minute closer to the Emperor's death. Another minute where their plan could fall apart. Doyen appeared at the laboratory door. He looked worried. "Jiwon, what are you doing?" "Everyone is talking about how a human is trying to break into the vault. Some of the guards are saying we should all be arrested. I am not breaking in. I am helping." "It does not look like that. It looks like you are involved in something dangerous. If this goes wrong, they will blame us, all of us. Every human on this planet." Jiwon knew his friend was right, but it was too late to back out now. "I have to see this through." "You're going to get us all killed," Doyen said quietly. Then he left. The words stung, but Jiwon could not think about that now. Hyun was calling him over. "We are almost ready. The maintenance port is accessible. We have the master code. We have calculated the timestamp, though we are not completely certain about that power transfer gap, and we found the manual override sequence in the original files." She looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "This is your idea. You should be there when we try it." "Are you sure?" "No. But you are the one who thought to look at maintenance protocols. You understand the logic behind this. If something goes wrong, you might see what we miss." Jiwon did not feel confident about that, but he nodded anyway. They walked to the vault, a group of scientists and engineers carrying equipment that looked more complex than anything Jiwon had ever seen. Security guards lined the corridors, watching them carefully. Word had spread through the palace. Everyone knew what was about to happen. When they reached the vault, Jiwon saw that a crowd had gathered. Council members stood in a viewing area behind a protective barrier. Military Commander Mirai was there, along with Security Director Sunwoo and at least 20 others. Cameras hovered in the air, recording everything. Bauman stood near the eastern wall where her team had removed layers of plating to expose the maintenance port. It was a small opening, barely visible, with connection points that glowed faintly blue. "Is everyone ready?" Yeon asked her team. They nodded, though Jiwon could see the fear in their eyes. They were about to attempt something that had never been done before. Something that could save their emperor or destroy their greatest secrets. Hyun turned to the crowd. "We are beginning the procedure now. If this works, the vault will enter diagnostic mode, then recalibration mode. We will have one chance to input the correct authentication. If we fail, the vault will seal permanently. And if the vault detects an attack," Sunwoo called out, "then it will destroy everything inside," Hyun said simply. "There is no way to stop that." She looked at Jiwon. "Are you ready?" Jiwon took a deep breath. "Yes, then let us begin." The laboratory equipment hummed as Hyun's team connected cables to the maintenance port. Jiwon watched from a few steps back, his hands clenched at his sides. Behind the protective barrier, the council members and other observers stood in complete silence. The weight of what they were about to do hung in the air like a physical thing. "Connection established," one of the engineers reported. "We are reading the vault's internal systems now." Data began flowing across the portable displays they had set up. Lines of code, system readouts, diagnostic information. To Jiwon, most of it was meaningless. But Hyun and her team read it like a language, nodding at some parts and frowning at others. "The timer shows 7,000 hours until the next automatic diagnostic," Hyun said. "We need to bypass the timer and force an early diagnostic. Sending the override sequence now." Her fingers moved across the controls. Jiwon held his breath. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the vault's main panel, which had been dark and dead for days, suddenly lit up with red light. An alarm began to sound low and angry. "It is rejecting the override," one of the scientists said, panic creeping into his voice. "The security system thinks we are attacking." "Calm down," Hyun ordered. "This is expected. The vault always resists manual overrides at first. We just need to send the master engineering code to prove we are authorized maintenance personnel." She pulled up the 47-digit code they had found in the old files. Every digit had to be perfect. One mistake would mean disaster. Hyun entered the code slowly, carefully, double-checking each number before moving to the next. The red light on the vault's panel flickered. "It is processing," Bowman whispered. The alarm stopped. The red light turned amber. "Diagnostic mode activated," Hyun said, and Ji-won could hear relief in her voice. "The vault thinks its DNA scanner needs testing. So far your theory is working." The vault's systems ran through their diagnostic checks. On the displays, Ji-won could see the scanner testing itself, checking connections, verifying its own programming. The process took 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours. Then a message appeared on the vault's panel. "Malfunction detected in primary authentication system." "What?" one of the scientists said. "We did not tell it there was a malfunction." "We did not have to," Hyun explained, a smile growing on her face. "The diagnostic is smart. It realizes that the Emperor has not opened the vault in days, which is unusual. It sees that there have been dozens of failed access attempts. It knows something is wrong, and so it is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is entering recalibration mode." The amber light on the vault's panel turned blue. New text appeared. "Recalibration mode active, awaiting 3-factor authentication." Behind the barrier, the council members began whispering to each other. Mirai stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the vault. Even from where he stood, Ji-won could see her hand resting on her weapon, ready for anything. "First factor," Hyun announced. "Master engineering code." She entered the 47-digit sequence again. The vault accepted it immediately. 1 green light appeared on the panel. "Second factor, timestamp verification." This was the part Ji-won worried about most, the calculation that might be wrong because of that power transfer 30 years ago. Hyun pulled up the final number. The total seconds since the vault's activation, accounting for every calendar change, every system update, every variable they could think of. She entered the number. The vault processed it. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Ji-won felt his heart sink. They had gotten it wrong. They had failed. Then a second green light appeared. Hyun let out a breath she had been holding. It accepted the timestamp. "We are through the second factor. How is that possible?" one of the scientists asked. "We guessed about the power transfer duration." "We guessed well," Hyun said. "Or the vault's tolerance for timestamp errors is larger than we thought. Either way, we are not stopping to ask questions. Third factor is the manual override sequence. But here they ran into a problem. The manual override required 3 people to input code simultaneously at 3 different panels. The vault's door had shifted, revealing the 3 panels, but they were spread far apart. "The panels are too far," Bowman said. "Even if we run, we cannot reach them fast enough to input the codes at the same time. The system requires synchronization within 1 second. Hyun looked at the panels, calculating. "Ji-won, you take the eastern panel. Bowman, you take the western panel. I will take the central one. We need to be in position and ready." They moved to their positions. Ji-won stood before the eastern panel, a simple display with a numeric keypad. His sequence was 12 digits long. He had memorized it during the preparation time, repeating it over and over in his mind. He could not afford to make a mistake now. "On my mark," Hyun called out. "We input the first digit together, then wait for the confirmation tone. Then the second digit, all the way through. Stay synchronized." Ji-won's hands were shaking. He pressed them against his legs, trying to stop the trembling. This was it. The final step. If they got this right, the vault would open. If they failed, it would seal forever. "Is everyone ready?" Hyun asked. "Ready," Bowman said. "Ready," Ji-won said, though his voice sounded strange to his own ears. "First digit in 3 are 2, 1, now." Ji-won pressed the first number, 8. From the other panels, he heard 2 soft beeps as Hyun and Bowman pressed their own first digits. Then a tone sounded from the vault itself, confirming they had synchronized correctly. Second digit, 3, 2, 1. Now. Again, they pressed together. Again, the confirmation tone. They continued through the sequence. Third digit, 4th, 5th. Each time Ji-won's hands shook a little less. Each time his breathing became a little steadier. They were doing it. They were actually doing it. 10th digit, 11th, 1 more to go. Final digit, Hyun said. If we get this right, the vault opens. 3, 2, 1, now. Ji-won pressed the final number. 3. The confirmation tone sounded. Then silence. The blue light on the vault's main panel began flashing. The massive doors, which had not moved without the Emperor's direct presence in decades, began to unseal. A sound like thunder rolled through the corridor as ancient mechanisms activated. Air hissed as the pressure equalized, and then slowly the doors opened. Inside, bathed in soft blue light, were shelves upon shelves of objects. Technology that hummed with power. Ancient weapons wrapped in protective fields. Data crystals containing secrets that could reshape civilizations. And there, on a shelf near the front, a small container marked with medical symbols. The antidote. Hyun ran forward and grabbed the container. She held it up for everyone to see. "We have it!" Behind the barrier, the council chamber erupted. Some people cheered. Others looked stunned. A few looked disappointed, though they tried to hide it. Medical staff rushed in immediately, taking the antidote from Hyun's hands and running toward the medical wing where the Emperor lay dying. Security guards moved to protect the now open vault, making sure nobody tried to take anything else. Ji-won stood at his panel, barely believing what had just happened. They had done it. They had opened the impossible vault. Bowman appeared beside him, her face split in a huge smile. "We did it! Ji-won, we actually did it!" Hyun walked over, looking exhausted but triumphant. "Your theory was correct. The maintenance protocols were there all along. We just never thought to look for them because we believed the vault was perfect." "Nothing is perfect," Ji-won said quietly. "No," Hyun agreed. "Nothing is. And that is a lesson we needed to learn." Security Director Sunwoo approached, his expression unreadable. Ji-won tensed, expecting accusations or threats. But instead, Sunwoo gave a small nod. "You have saved our Emperor. Whatever doubts I had about your intentions, I was wrong. It was not exactly an apology, but coming from Sunwoo, it might have been the closest thing to one." Military Commander Mireille walked up to the vault's entrance, looking inside with fascination. One human asked one simple question, and it saved an empire. How many other simple questions have we been ignoring? "Too many," Jan said. "Far too many." News came from the medical wing an hour later. The doctors had administered the antidote. Emperor Talvex's condition was stabilizing. He would live. The poison was being purged from his system, and he would wake within days. The palace, which had been tight with tension and fear, seemed to relax all at once. People smiled. Guards stood easier. The crisis had passed. But Ji-won knew this was not the end of the story. The vault was open now. The Emperor would want answers. He would want to know how his perfect security had been bypassed. He would want to meet the human who had figured it out, and Ji-won had no idea what would happen then. For now, though, he just sat in a quiet corner of the corridor, letting the exhaustion wash over him. Doyen found him there an hour later. "I heard what you did," Doyen said. "Everyone is talking about it. The human who opened the impossible vault." "I just asked a question," Ji-won said. "That is all. Just a simple question about emergency codes." Doyen sat down beside him. Maybe simple questions are more powerful than we think. Maybe they were, Ji-won thought. Maybe they were. Ji-won stood in Chief Scientist Hyun's laboratory, feeling very small. The room was filled with equipment he did not understand, displays showing data he could not read, and scientists who looked at him like he was dirt on their shoes, a human maintenance worker in the most advanced lab in the Empire. "He did not belong here." "Well," Hyun said, her arms crossed. "Bowman tells me you have an idea. Speak." Ji-won glanced at Bowman, who gave him an encouraging nod. He took a breath. "Everyone is trying to break into the vault or fake the Emperor's DNA," he began. "But the security is too good. You cannot trick it or force it." "I understand that." "Yes, we know," one of the other scientists said with annoyance. "We have established this already. If you have nothing useful to add—" "Let him speak," Hyun interrupted. Ji-won continued. "But every system, no matter how perfect, needs maintenance. The DNA scanner is technology. Technology can break, so there must be some way for engineers to fix it if something goes wrong. The DNA scanner does not break," the scientist said. "It is built to last 10,000 years. But what if it did?" Ji-won pressed. "What if the scanner stopped working tomorrow? How would you fix it? How would you access it? Would the vault just be locked forever?" Hyun tilted her head, considering. "The scanner has diagnostic protocols, but those are for testing the equipment, not opening the vault." What kind of diagnostic protocols? Jiwon asked. Hyun moved to a display and pulled up a file. The scanner runs a self-diagnostic every 10,000 hours. It checks its own systems, makes sure everything is working correctly. During the diagnostic, the scanner enters a low-power mode. And what happens to the security during that time? The vault remains locked. The diagnostic only tests the scanner itself. Jiwon moved closer to the display, forgetting his nervousness. But the scanner must identify itself to the vault's main system, right? It must prove that it is the real diagnostic function and not some attack or hack attempt. How does it do that? Hyun's four eyes widened slightly. She pulled up another file. There is a master engineering code, a 47-digit authentication sequence. When the diagnostic runs, it uses this code to verify that it is a legitimate system function. And if someone else had that code, they could not do anything with it, Hyun said. But her voice was less certain now. The code only authenticates diagnostic equipment. It does not open the vault. But what happens after the diagnostic? What if the diagnostic finds a problem? Hyun went very still. Her fingers moved across the display, pulling up files that Jiwon guessed most people never looked at. Technical specifications, original engineering documents, the kind of boring details that nobody paid attention to until something went wrong. Here, Hyun said quietly. She pointed at a section of text. If the diagnostic detects a malfunction in the DNA scanner, it triggers a recalibration mode. What does recalibration mode do? Jiwon asked. Hyun read from the display. In recalibration mode, the vault temporarily switches from single-factor authentication to three-factor authentication. It requires the master engineering code, a timestamp verification, and a manual override sequence. The laboratory had gone completely quiet. Everyone was staring at the display. Three-factor authentication, Hyun repeated. That means if we can trigger recalibration mode, we do not need the Emperor's DNA. We need three other things instead. Things that we might actually be able to get, Bomin added. One of the other scientists shook his head. But we would need to trigger a diagnostic cycle. Those only happen automatically every 10,000 hours. The last one was 3,000 hours ago. We cannot wait 7,000 hours. Can we force it? Jiwon asked. Trigger the diagnostic manually. Theoretically, Hyun said slowly. But it would require accessing the vault's core programming. That is not easy. Is it harder than breaking through a DNA lock? Jiwon asked. Hyun looked at him, and for the first time she almost smiled. No, it is not. The scientists went to work immediately. Hyun brought in programmers, engineers, and security experts. They gathered around the displays, analyzing every line of code in the vault system, looking for the right access point. Jiwon watched, feeling useless now. He had given them an idea, but this level of work was beyond him. These were the smartest people in the Empire. He was just a maintenance worker who had asked a simple question. Bowman stood beside him. That was brilliant, she said quietly. I have been working near that vault for 2 years, and I never thought to look at the maintenance protocols. It is how humans think, Jiwon said. We always plan for things to break, because things always break eventually. Veltharians do not think that way. We believe our technology is perfect. We believe we can build things that never fail. But things always fail. Bowman nodded. Yes, I am learning that now. Hours passed. Jiwon and Bowman were sent back to their regular duties, but Jiwon could not focus. He kept thinking about the vault, about whether his idea would actually work. What if he was wrong? What if triggering the diagnostic destroyed the vault? What if he made things worse? That evening he was summoned back to the laboratory. But this time it was not just Hyun waiting for him. The entire Imperial Council was there. Military Commander Mirai stood near the back, her hand on her weapon. Security Director Sunwoo watched him with suspicious eyes. Other council members he did not recognize filled the room. Human, Mirai said. Hyun has explained your theory. She believes it might work. But there are those of us who are not convinced. Sunwoo stepped forward. This could be sabotage. You are an outsider. Why would you help us? Why would you want to save our emperor? Jiwon felt his mouth go dry. I am just trying to help. Or you are lying. Using this crisis to destroy our most valuable secrets, I am not lying. How do we know that? Sunwoo demanded. You show up here 6 months ago. You ask questions about the vault. And now when the emperor is dying, you suddenly have a solution? That is very convenient. Jiwon did not know what to say. He looked at Hyun, but she was watching the council members, not him. If he is lying, Mirai said, and we try his method, what happens? Hyun answered. If he is wrong about the recalibration mode, the vault will detect our attempt to access core programming. It might trigger the self-destruct sequence. We would lose everything inside, and if he is right, then we can open the vault, get the antidote, and save the Emperor. The council members talked among themselves. Jiwon caught bits of conversation. Some were arguing for trying it. Others wanted to reject the idea completely. A few seemed to think that letting the Emperor die might not be the worst outcome. Finally, Mirai raised her hand for silence. I will make the decision. We try the humans' method. Sunwoo looked angry. You cannot— I can, Mirai interrupted. And I am. Because we have no other options. The Emperor has less than 3 days. If the human is wrong, the vault destroys itself and we proceed with military succession. If he is right, we save our Emperor and maintain stability. She looked directly at Jiwon. But if this is a trick, human, if you are sabotaging us, I will personally make sure you suffer for it. Do you understand? Jiwon nodded. His heart was beating so hard he thought everyone could hear it. Good, Mirai said. She turned to Hyun. You have 12 hours to prepare. Then we attempt to open the vault. The council members filed out, still arguing among themselves. Hyun immediately began giving orders to her team. Bowman appeared at Jiwon's side. Are you all right? She asked. Jiwon was not sure. His idea had gone from a simple thought to a plan that might save or destroy an empire. If he was wrong, people would die. The empire would collapse into civil war, and it would be his fault. I hope I am right, he said quietly. So do I, Bowman replied. So do I. The Imperial Council chamber was filled with tension. 12 of the most powerful people in the galaxy sat around a circular table, and every one of them looked worried. At the head of the table sat Hyun, the chief scientist of the Empire. Her 4 eyes were fixed on the hologram floating above the table, showing the Emperor's vital signs. How long does he have? Asked Military Commander Mirai. She was a tall woman with scars across her face from battles fought decades ago. Her hand rested on the weapon at her belt as it always did. 5 days, Hyun said. Maybe 6 if we keep him in stasis. But without the antidote, Emperor Talvex will die. And the antidote is in the vault, said Council Member Taman, stating what everyone already knew. Can we synthesize it? Recreate the formula? Mirai asked. Hyun shook her head. The Emperor kept the complete formula secret. We have partial data, but not enough. We could spend months trying to recreate it. We do not have months. Security Director Sunwoo leaned forward. Then we must open the vault. Use whatever means necessary. It is not that simple, Hyun replied. The vault's security system is the most advanced in the galaxy. It requires the Emperor's DNA, living DNA. We cannot fake it. We cannot trick it. I have had my best people working on it for 12 hours. There is no way in. There is always a way, Mirai said. We could cut through the doors, Sunwoo made a harsh sound. And trigger the self-destruct sequence? The vault is programmed to destroy everything inside if anyone tries to force entry. We would lose not just the antidote, but every other secret in there. Technology that took centuries to develop, weapons, maps, everything. So we do nothing? Mirai's voice rose. We let our Emperor die? I did not say that, Sunwoo replied coldly. I am saying we need to think carefully. If we make one mistake, we lose everything. Hyun looked around the table. I have scientists from 8 different worlds working on this. Experts in DNA technology, encryption, quantum locks. So far, nothing. The system is too well designed. Too perfect. The word hung in the air. Perfect. The Veltharians had built the perfect vault, and now that perfection was going to kill their Emperor. What about the heir? Asked another council member. Can we accelerate the DNA registration process? It takes 30 years for a reason, Hyun explained. The vault needs to map every aspect of the heir's genetic code, study how it changes over time, account for aging and mutation. There are no shortcuts. Mirai stood up from her chair. Then we are wasting time. Every hour we sit here talking, the Emperor gets closer to death. I say we take our chances with cutting through the door. And if you are wrong, Sunwoo challenged, if the vault destroys itself? What then? Then we deal with what comes next, Mirai said. We hold a proper succession. We maintain order, but at least we tried to save him. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Everyone in the room knew what Mirai meant. If the Emperor died, there would be a power struggle. Different factions would fight for control. Some people in this room might actually want the Emperor to die. Hyun noticed this too. We still have time. Let my scientists work. There must be something we are missing. The council session ended with no decision. Hyun returned to her laboratory, where teams of scientists were gathered around displays showing every detail of the vault's security system. They had been working without sleep, running simulation after simulation. All failures. Anything? Hyun asked her assistant. Nothing, ma'am. The DNA lock cannot be bypassed. We tried quantum spoofing, temporal hacking, even building a clone body. The system rejects everything. Hyun rubbed her tired eyes. Somewhere in this palace, the Emperor lay dying, and she, the smartest scientist in the Empire, could not save him. In the human quarters, Ji-won lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling. He could not sleep. Everyone was talking about the Emperor's poisoning. The palace was filled with tension, guards everywhere, important-looking people rushing through corridors, and at the center of it all, an unopenable vault. Do-yeon sat on his own bed across the room. Do you think he will die? I do not know, Ji-won said. Maybe, probably. What happens to us if he does? Will the new Emperor keep the exchange program? It was a practical question. If Emperor Talvex died, everything might change. The humans might be sent home. Or worse, they might be blamed for something. Outsiders always made convenient scapegoats. We should stay quiet and keep working, Do-yeon said. Whatever happens, we need to stay out of it. Ji-won nodded but said nothing. He kept thinking about the vault, about that question he had asked Bowman days ago. What about an emergency code? He had been thinking about it on and off since then. The more he thought, the stranger it seemed. Every human security system had failsafes. Even the most secret military bases on Earth had emergency protocols. Ways for rescue workers to get in during disasters. Ways for systems to be overridden if something went catastrophically wrong. But the Veltharians had built a vault with no backup plan. They had been so confident in their technology, so sure nothing could go wrong, that they never planned for failure. And now their Emperor was dying because of it. The next day, Ji-won was assigned to work in a section near the main laboratories. He and Bowman were replacing some old power cables when he overheard a group of engineers talking. It is impossible, one of them said. The DNA scanner is built into the quantum matrix of the door itself. You cannot separate them. You cannot bypass it. What if we used a genetic sample from his medical records? Another suggested. Already tried. The sample needs to be fresh, living. The system checks cellular activity, electrical impulses, everything. A stored sample is useless, they kept talking, going over the same problems again and again. Ji-won listened as he worked. Same issues, same dead ends. They were all trying to break through the security, trying to trick the system or force it open. But what if they were thinking about it wrong? Ji-won put down his tools. Bauman looked at him. Is something wrong? Can I ask you something? About the vault? Bowman hesitated. I suppose. Everyone is trying to break the lock or fake the Emperor's DNA, right? Yes, but it is not working. The system is too advanced. Ji-won nodded slowly. But what if the lock itself breaks? What if the DNA scanner stops working? Bowman frowned. What do you mean? Every system has failure modes, ways it behaves when something breaks. The Veltharians built the vault to be perfect, but what happens when perfect systems fail? There must be some kind of protocol. Bowman stared at him. I do not understand. You want to break the lock? No, not break it. Just make the system think it is broken. Every security system needs maintenance eventually. There must be some way for engineers to fix the DNA scanner if it stops working. Some way to test it, calibrate it, access it. For a long moment, Bowman said nothing. Then she spoke quietly. That is an interesting idea. It is probably nothing, Ji-won said quickly. Just a thought. But Bowman was still looking at him with those large eyes. Wait here. She left quickly before Ji-won could stop her. He went back to his work, but his hands were shaking slightly. He had spoken up. He had shared an idea. Do-yeon would be furious if he knew. 20 minutes later, Bowman returned. With her was Chief Scientist Hyun. Ji-won stood up quickly, suddenly aware that he was covered in dust and oil. Hyun looked at him with an expression he could not read. You are the human who asked about emergency codes, Hyun said. It was not a question. Ji-won nodded. Tell me your theory, Hyun ordered, and do not waste my time. The Emperor has less than 4 days to live. The grand hall of the imperial palace glowed with 1,000 lights. Dignitaries from across the galaxy stood in neat rows, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. At the center of it all stood Emperor Talvex, his tall frame draped in robes that shimmered like liquid gold. He had ruled the Veltharian Empire for 300 years, and today he would show his guests the greatest treasure of his reign. "Behold," the Emperor announced, his voice echoing through the vast chamber, the Imperial Vault. The massive doors before them were built into the palace's deepest wall. They were made of a metal that no weapon could cut, no heat could melt, and no force could break. But the doors themselves were not what made the vault special. It was the lock. Emperor Talvex stepped forward and placed his hand on a smooth panel beside the doors. A blue light scanned his palm, then his eyes seemed to look deeper past skin and bone into the very building blocks of his being. The light turned green. The doors opened with a deep, satisfying sound. Inside, the guests could see shelves lined with objects that glowed with their own light. Ancient weapons that could destroy stars, technology that could extend life for centuries, maps to hidden worlds, secrets that could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. "This vault," the Emperor continued, "opens only for me. My DNA is the key. There is no code, no password, no other way inside. Even if someone were to capture me and force me to open it, the vault would know. It reads stress levels, brain patterns, everything. It would seal itself forever rather than open under threat." A ambassador from the Krell systems raised one of his forearms. "What if something were to happen to you, Emperor? How would your heir access the vault?" The Emperor smiled. It was not a kind smile. "My heir's DNA must be registered through a process that takes 30 years. Until then, the vault remains sealed. This is perfect security. This is absolute protection." The dignitaries murmured their approval. Such power. Such control. The Veltharians had truly created something impossible to break. Far from the Grand Hall, in a maintenance corridor that smelled of oil and electronics, G1 adjusted his tool belt and wiped sweat from his forehead. The environmental controls in this section of the palace were acting up again, and it was his job to fix them. G1 was human, one of only 30 humans on the entire planet of Velthar. He had arrived 6 months ago as part of an exchange program. The Veltharians needed skilled workers and humans needed jobs. It was a simple arrangement, though not always a comfortable one. The Veltharians looked down on most other species, and humans were no exception. "Pass me the calibrator," G1 said to his partner, a young Veltharian named Bowman. Bowman handed him the tool without a word. She was one of the few Veltharians who actually talked to the human workers like they were real people. Most just gave orders and walked away. G1 climbed down from the access panel and checked his readings. That should do it. The temperature controls should work properly now. "Good," Bowman said. "We are already behind schedule. The next checkpoint is near the Imperial Vault." G1 had heard of the vault, of course. Everyone had. It was supposed to be the most secure place in the galaxy. As they walked through the corridors toward their next job, G1 could hear palace guards talking nearby. "Did you see the ceremony?" one guard asked another. "Of course." The Emperor showing off again. "That vault is incredible, though. Completely impossible to break into. I heard even if you cut off his hand, it would not work. The scanner reads living DNA, checks brain patterns, everything." G1 and Bowman passed the guards and arrived at their workstation. It was a small room filled with monitors and control systems, located just outside the vault's outer perimeter. G1 began checking the environmental controls while Bowman updated their work log. As he worked, G1 thought about what the guards had said. A vault that only opened for one person. No backup access, no alternative method. It seemed strange to him. "Bowman," he said, not looking up from his work. "Can I ask you something?" "What is it?" "The vault. The one that only opens for the Emperor." Bowman's expression became guarded. "What about it?" "What happens if there is a fire inside? Or a radiation leak? Does the emergency code override the DNA lock?" Bowman stared at him like he had asked what color the sky was. "There is no emergency code. That would defeat the purpose. The vault is perfectly sealed, perfectly protected. Nothing can go wrong." G1 nodded slowly and went back to his work. But the question stayed in his mind. He had studied human security systems back on Earth. Every single one, no matter how advanced, had some kind of emergency bypass, some way for firefighters to get in during a disaster. some way for rescue workers to access trapped people. It was basic safety design. But maybe the Veltharians did things differently. Maybe they were so confident in their technology that they did not need backup plans. Still, it seemed odd. Over the next few days, Jiwon could not stop thinking about it. He mentioned it once to Doyen, another human worker and his friend from Earth. "Why do you care?" Doyen asked as they ate lunch in the human quarters. "It is not our problem. We fix air conditioning and check pipes. That is it." "I know," Jiwon said. "It just seems like bad design. What if something goes wrong?" Doyen laughed. "The Veltharians think they are perfect. They think their technology is perfect. They do not plan for things going wrong because they believe things cannot go wrong. That is a dangerous way to think. Maybe. But again, not our problem. Keep your head down, Jiwon. Do the work, collect the pay, and do not ask too many questions. Humans are not exactly popular here." Jiwon knew his friend was right, but he had always been the type to ask questions. It was what made him a good engineer. You had to understand how systems worked, and more importantly, how they could fail. 3 days after the Emperor's ceremony, Jiwon was working on a power conduit in a lower level when he heard shouting. Palace guards ran past him, their faces tight with worry. Medical staff rushed by with equipment. Something was wrong. By evening, the news had spread through the entire palace. Emperor Talvex had collapsed during a state dinner. The doctor said he had been poisoned. The poison was slow-acting, already deep in his system. He had fallen into a coma, and the only antidote, the only formula that could save him, was locked inside the Imperial Vault, the vault that only he could open.